It's happening right now. Benzino just
you're paying it forward.
Yeah, you're paying it forward.
Well,
so it's the same.
You know, but that's important to me.
And
it's more important
it.
to me like now more than anything because, you know, especially even with Clark's passing, I was like, man, what are you holding on to a lot of this shit for? Like, you know, again, like we'll talk about it a little bit, like the Launchpad, like those old shows, they're just sitting in my hard drive. I'm like, for what? You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, at least, you know, allow some of the Boston MCs that got on it, maybe they can hear themselves on the show or whatever.
You blew my mind with that. Like for when we saw you at Dane's event, and I was like, you remember the AWOL and shit. That blew my mind.
Well, it's funny because, well, we'll talk about that in a second. But you know, the thing about Clark was, and so then I had the Hub Club or whatever, and then you know, kind of through the next step was, and probably the real like game changer for me is that, you know, I started getting just there was like little club gigs, right? And I linked up with Billy and Bobby McLean, the McLean twins.
Yeah.
And they had just come off tour with Bobby Brown. They had been his dancers, and they wanted to do some hip hop stuff. And they had seen me before, and they were like, oh, I was cool with their older brother Al. And so I linked with them, started DJing for them, and we were doing shows. And Billy Bobby, if you've never seen their show back in the days, it's just, you know, they won the Apollo 18 times, whatever.
They were KRS-One when he came to Boston, the guys that were dancing with
Correct.
him.
Yep. Yes. And so I was DJing for them, which in turn ended up linking me with Danny Wood from New Kids because he was kind of bankrolling and he was behind them and he was supporting these guys in their project.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
and he rapped on it. Danny Wood was a rapper
they were all from the same area. They were all from the DYC, Dorchester Youth Collaborate. Yeah. This was their whole thing, and again, like this is gonna go off in so many different branches right now. But so through that, I got down with, you know, Danny and working with Danny a little bit and working with Billy and Bobby and kind of just that whole scene. And New Kids probably at that time were maybe just a little bit past their peak in terms of like the absolute madness, but still massive worldwide. Maybe the US was starting to quiet down a little bit, but like globally, just still out of control. I mean, shit, they're still fucking
still out of control,
right? Still going, but but then through that, and then I met T-Max because T-Max was Dorchester Youth Collaborate, and that was my first real like MC that I, you know, and again, like the other guys for sure was, but like Max was different. And super fast forward, whatever, Danny and I, we started working with the guys from the Underground Studios, which was over in the Alston Brighton area at first, and then they ended up moving to Needham, and there was like a lot of stuff that came out of like Underground Studios. And so we formed a record label called Damage Records. And that was kind of like my first introduction to even anything remotely like that. No idea what I was doing. And Danny, you know, he's an artist, you know what I'm saying? So who knows? But we put out a record on T-Max called Execution Style. That was phenomenal. Through some connects that I had at the Source, actually, a friend of mine, Josh, worked in like the classified section over there and like was selling ads or whatever.